Hi, thanks everyone for joining. So today I'm with Peter Jacobsen, who is the GM for Rebuild Manufacturing's new battery solutions. Nice to meet you, Peter, and keen to have this conversation. If you could give us a quick introduction into yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Josh. It's a real pleasure to be chatting with you today. Yeah, so Rebuild Battery Solutions is a division within Rebuild Manufacturing, which is a US-based engineering and manufacturing corporation. I personally come from a decade of battery and energy storage experience, most of that with Panasonic prior to joining Rebuild, and now I run the Battery Solutions division, serving customers in a wide variety of industries, and happy to talk more about those services.
Great, perfect. Well, I think, from my perspective, Rebuild as a brand is growing and got such a great reputation, and I'm keen to delve into this in a little bit more detail and hopefully share all the good things that you guys are doing over there. So in terms of obviously that core manufacturing business, I suppose what sets you guys apart at the moment from that traditional manufacturing companies?
Sure. So, Rebuild Manufacturing as a whole has grown through the acquisition of very successful engineering and manufacturing companies, and, has the ability to work with customers all the way from initial product concept all the way through volume production, right? And so we're able to engage wherever our customer needs along that value chain and provide the efficiencies required to, get a product to market as quickly as possible at lowest cost possible. What we like to say is we take them from brain to box, from product concept to volume manufacturing. And, Rebuild Manufacturing as a whole has very strong vertical integration. In addition to battery solutions, we have wire harness design build, we have composite and metal fabrication capabilities, in-house software development, lean manufacturing. And so really bring kind of an unmatched expertise and set of resources and capabilities to our customers that maybe other manufacturers or standalone engineering shops can't bring.
Yeah, great. I think it's that ability to scale quickly for these businesses, isn't it? And where they can lean on your expertise in that space. In terms of I suppose progressing these businesses, is there an area in particular where you guys bring additional technologies to these companies, whether that be kind of automation, robotics, AI? Is there anywhere that you guys add a lot of value in that space to that manufacturing process?
Yeah, I mean, from battery solutions perspective, we take a pretty flexible approach on automation, and it's often driven by our customer needs and the product needs, right? And so we have to make sure first from a manufacturing process perspective that we have the core capabilities running very well. And then we layer in automation as needed to hit price points, to hit takt times, to hit, manufacturing lead times. And we only do that in conjunction with our portfolio of programs and customer needs. And so, definitely, there's automation that's needed very early on for things like bonding cells to bus bars in a battery manufacturing process. And then you layer on additional automation as needed, depending on CapEx and OpEx requirements.
Yeah. Okay, great. And again, I think that's the value add, isn't it? That experience of doing this and doing it multiple times is where you can add that value straight away. So, and we've spoken previously, and I think, certainly the solutions business has come off the back of these conversations with businesses, and there's an opportunity for you guys there. So it'd be great to delve into that a bit more detail and understand more about that, how that solutions business has come to be and kind of what the plan is for it.
Yeah. So battery solutions was grown organically within Rebuild, and it was a response to a market need. We had a lot of customers come to Rebuild Manufacturing, requesting support for anywhere from initial engineering and development for the battery packs all the way through production, and these folks were essentially looking for alternatives to existing solutions that they were finding maybe in countries outside the US, and they were looking to onshore or reshore those solutions or do, a drop-in replacement for an existing solution, or maybe they were able to find some battery cells but didn't have the capabilities to package those cells into modules and packs for their vehicle, or didn't couldn't find battery cell sources. And, combining that market need to just a constant influx of those requests and overlaying that over Rebuild's, set of capabilities and skill sets, it became very clear, market fit for Rebuild to get into the battery space. And so we've been now serving customers for, over 2 years in automotive and power sports and industrial energy storage, stationary storage. So a wide variety of industries. And, it just came to the point where it made, a lot of sense to stand up a battery solutions division and publicly launch that this year.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part, isn't it? Is recognizing where that gap in the market is and leveraging off what is already a great business across the manufacturing business to plug that gap and add that additional support to potential clients. I suppose there's a lot of bespoke work that comes with that due to the requirements of those businesses. So I suppose what's the process for you guys in leveraging the manufacturing business but still being able to provide a bespoke service for these clients?
Yeah. So maybe I should just give a quick summary. The services that we do offer are battery pack design and development, also BMS, battery management system design and development as part of that battery pack, and then battery pack production, both in-house, but then we can also design and assemble and install battery assembly lines at customers' sites if that's needed. And so that gives us a lot of capability and skill set to support customers who need to design a bespoke solution, right? And so we're seeing a lot of effort in the industry to, I would say, lower the cost and standardize battery cells. And that's a great effort. Where it's been harder to standardize is the battery modules and the battery packs that then go into the customer's vehicles. And it's simply a fact that, every single customer has very specific requirements to their vehicle. And trying to fit a standard battery pack into a customer's vehicle can be done. It just means you're sacrificing energy density, you're sacrificing power density. You might not have the charge discharge characteristics or the ideal voltage range that you need for the customer's application. And so, standardization lowers costs is great, but it comes with, some significant disadvantages, especially for customers who are very sensitive to those performance requirements. And so, what Rebuild is doing on that front and playing in the custom battery pack design development space is how can we reduce NRE, reduce development costs as much as possible to get them as close as possible to zero and get the same benefits of a standard battery pack, procurement effort, but with the benefits of having custom design to meet, all of the customer's electrical and physical dimensional requirements as close as possible. And, we're doing that through a variety of techniques. We have a portfolio of reference designs that we've built for customers and for ourselves across all of these industries that can be used as modular designs to expedite the development process, make that go really quickly. So all you're doing is tweaking some things here and there to get to a design that perfectly fits the customer's needs as quickly as possible. And combining those reference designs with our software tools that can allow us to go through very quick design iterations helps reduce those development costs very significantly.
Yeah, for sure. And that actually leads me on is that, with everything coming, or there's been a big emphasis, hasn't there, about bringing things back onshore, back onto US soil for these kind of productions and supply chains. Do you think, and again, not to put you on the spot, but do you think we'll see a transition towards kind of OEMs and businesses who are developing the vehicles moving towards more standardized kind of requirements? Or do you think there's still going to be businesses that are bringing kind of unique kind of specifications to the market?
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a trend towards standardization of cells. We're definitely seeing a trend towards standardization even of modules. And that's, specifically for automotive and stationary storage, where we're seeing most of that effort. Battery packs have been a lot tougher to standardize because that's just the final vehicle packaging. Every vehicle has their unique dimensional constraints, vehicle electrical requirements. And it's very hard for someone, let's say, in the aerospace industry to talk with someone in the power sports industry and say, here are our vehicle specs. What are your vehicle specs? Let's try to make them align as closely as possible so we can drive standardization in the supply chain. That's likely not going to happen, and I understand why. And so then you're counting on using modular building blocks to then package those into the battery packs. And we're seeing cylindrical cells as a building block. We're seeing modules with pouch cells in them as a building block. We're seeing prismatic cells as building blocks. And those work well for a lot of industries. Let's say automotive, who has battery packs ranging from 50 kilowatt hours to 150 kilowatt hours. It's pretty easy to use a 10 kilowatt hour building block, right? Where that maybe becomes more difficult is you can't use a 10 kilowatt hour building block for a drone that has a battery pack requirement of 1.5 kilowatt hours, right? So that building block is too big. And so you just see examples like that scattered across the industries, and it's really why it's hard to drive standardization into battery packs.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, for me, I think that just the principle of that modular approach to that makes so much sense and gives the end client that flexibility to kind of scale up and scale down and really get the most out of that pack based on the capability that you guys can bring to the table. So I think that makes complete sense. I guess my question around that would be, as these are tweaks and as people are building these modular packs, how do you guys ensure that you're able to kind of keep that transparency and that visibility across the quality and ensure the supply chain is the level required across whichever sector it might be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that question. On the supply chain side, supply chain management is complex, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of strategies to manage the supply chain appropriately, and we have an entire supply chain team to do this for Rebuild and for our customers, right? And so, first for managing the supply chain and reducing risk there's a lot of strategies and tactics, right? And it's first and foremost, you want to make sure it's resilient, right? And so, we have strategies for supplier diversification, whether that's multi-sourcing or regional diversification for key parts. Strategic inventory management through safety stock, making sure high-risk items have higher inventory than low-risk items. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean expensive components are high-risk items. We often see lower cost components, actually, like electrical connectors, be high risk from a lead time and availability and inventory perspective. And so it doesn't end up actually being that huge of an investment to make sure you have appropriate safety stock. And then in addition to that, there's contract management, long-term contracts, flexible contracts. There's, logistics optimization. We make sure we have diversified shipping routes, ensure we're appropriately planning for customs. And so, that's all making sure our supply chain is resilient to make sure we have access to, the modular components, the cells, et cetera, needed for our customers.
That literally answers my next kind of question that I was going to go down, is how do you build that resilience into that as the business grows and demand grows? How do you build that? And I think, certainly having that safety stock in and around high value components just gives that extra element of confidence to any client that's engaging with you that they're going to be able to deliver their program on time and get the result that they need, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. And, battery cells appropriately get a lot of attention as, a component within battery packs that are often hard for our customers to secure a steady supply for, especially for customers maybe outside of automotive or stationary storage who have large demands that, appropriately attract our partners to give their supply to. And so, one potentially benefit from, I would say, slowed automotive demand these days is, the benefit of diversifying from our cell suppliers into new industries. And so that's actually where Rebuild often helps our partners, our battery cell partners, is we can act as demand aggregation for them, bringing customers from many industries, get them the demand that they would consider as minimum demand needed, but then also help them diversify into more industries beyond just automotive and stationary storage.
Yeah, that makes sense when you kind of look at it that way as well. And I suppose, on that note, are you seeing a particular sway in the market to a certain area? You mentioned obviously the automotive market slowing down slightly. Has that been counteracted by other areas being more active in that space?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of activity, I would say, in the aerospace and defense sector. We're seeing certainly a lot of activity in stationary storage, and I would say also like specifically data centers is getting a lot of attention most recently. And then, power sports, kind of low speed vehicles, and then on-road, off-road trucking as well is another area we're seeing a lot of interest and demand moving towards.
That's interesting. And the data center stuff is something that we've definitely taken note of as well from our perspective. And, certainly anything around those kind of UPS, PDU systems is really in high demand at the moment. And I imagine that's the same for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. It's and it makes a lot of sense, right? Like at these data centers are generally going in areas that maybe utilities didn't previously were planning for robust electrical infrastructure, utility infrastructure. And even if they do have it in place, the power needs, the energy needs for these data centers driven by, these new AI needs are pretty significant, right? And so to the extent that you can use on-site storage to help peak shave, or you can use energy storage for key resiliency to make sure the data centers don't go down, or can use it to reduce diesel genset emissions to the extent that they have sustainability goals. There's a lot of real reasons driving battery pack needs for data centers.
Definitely. No. And, just touching on that UPS, I think we mentioned it earlier, the quality element of the products that you guys provide is so important, and especially in that UPS space for data centers and different areas like that. I guess we've crossed that combination of the stuff that you do on site directly and obviously the work that you do with the clients on their site. How is it that you guys are able to maintain such high quality across two different working methods, if you will?
Can you clarify what you mean by two different working methods?
Yeah, as in two different sites. So obviously working within the rebuild manufacturing model, but obviously, as you mentioned, going to on-site with the client as well. How do you ensure that you maintain the same level of quality you would under your own site as you would working on a client site?
I see. And so you're talking in terms of maybe quality management for our in-house production versus quality management for production operation that is located at a customer site?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, for on-site, we have, clear quality control processes, and it comes down to making sure we're collecting the right data at the right time to make quality decisions. And so there's key points within the production assembly line where we're collecting data. We're analyzing that data to identify anomalies and defects and quality issues. And you want to do that as early as is feasible to make sure you're not building a full product before you find quality defects. And so, that's the general ideology that drives Rebuild's quality processes within our own production site. And we're, certified to ISO to AS9100 for defense customers. And so we're driven by, recognized industry standard quality programs. So there's making sure you're collecting data at the right time, but then also, once you collect that data, where are you putting it and how do you analyze it? And that's where, it's really great that we have our in-house digital team and software engineering team where we can collect all of this data from perhaps disparate data sources, data repositories, disparate equipment, vendors, software tools, and collect it all into a single software system and do improved analytics on our end. And so that's Rebuild's own production. When we design, assemble, and install a production line at a customer site, there's quality engineering involved, certainly, with designing the system. And then when we install it at the customer site, we give them the option, whether they want to run it themselves or they want Rebuild to run it. Now, if they run it themselves, then they'll determine their quality program. But if we're running it for them, we have the exact same quality strategy and processes for a line that's running maybe in a customer site that's co-located with their vehicle assembly versus our own production facility in Pittsburgh.
Well, your software team can add a lot of value to that business as well, looking at those data points that you mentioned.
Yeah, certainly. It's not an easy task collecting data sources, data from disparate sources, and there's so much opportunity to collect data as well, whether it's from the MEP, whether it's from equipment on runtime, on overall equipment effectiveness, and it becomes pretty burdensome to have to view all of that data in different sources and then do analytics without that capability of combining everything into a single, user interface, single platform that we can then do analytics on.
I think that's where these businesses will get such great value from working with a company like Rebuild, is that so often you can see companies drown in data, and often, actually establishing what the key metrics are and what they can tweak and the levers they can pull to improve their process can get lost in the volume. So I think having a business like yourselves who've done this on repeat and had success across multiple areas, multiple specialisms, just will allow these businesses to get to those critical points a bit faster and improve their processes.
Yeah.
Perfect. I suppose digging into the solutions business, I'm keen to understand what the plans are for that as well. I think it's a super exciting time, obviously, for you personally as leading that business unit, and for the business as it grows into that, as you said, high demand space. So I guess what does the next kind of 6, 12, 18 months look like for specifically the solutions business?
Right. Yeah. I mean, next 6, 12 months, it's continuing to build out and scale our manufacturing facility in Pittsburgh to grow with our customers, and to grow as we bring in new customers. And it's to continue helping our customers on the development side as well, to make sure they get the battery pack designs they need to make sure their business is successful. Because a lot of these companies who are turning to electrified products are realizing that the battery pack is extremely critical to the success of their product and their business. And so, in the next 12 months, I fully expect us to build out and fill our Pittsburgh facility. And then, as further electrification demand grows within the US and further demand for localization of battery pack manufacturing, 5-10 years plus, I fully expect us to grow our manufacturing footprint across the US, past just our Pittsburgh facility. Maybe we add facilities on the West Coast for customers who are very sensitive to, transport and logistics to getting to project sites on the West Coast. We'll continue to have co-located facilities for those customers that need that as well. And so, the plan is to grow with the US battery industry, and I fully expect it to keep growing, and Rebuild will be here alongside helping it grow.
It sounds like, just from an external perspective, for any engineer in the market, it sounds like it's going to be a ride that is going to offer a lot of opportunity, a lot of exposure as well. And I think, certainly that is something that is attractive to people, isn't it? Having that exposure to multiple businesses and multiple challenges and developing them themselves as engineers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The battery space is really exciting right now. There's a lot of really fun engineering challenges to solve before you even get to manufacturing. But even in that, to your point, in that engineering phase, you're designing for very specific performance requirements. You're designing for cost. You have pretty interesting constraints that you're dealing with, whether it's on the supply chain side and country of origin requirements, or, just energy density, power density requirements. And that's, those are the engineering challenges. And then we get to layer on another fun challenge within Rebuild is we're designing for manufacturing and assembly, right? So every one of our designs are designed to make sure we're manufacturing these as cost effectively as possible. And it's a lot easier to do when you have that manufacturing capability in-house, what manufacturing process you're designing the product for, and you have the manufacturing team to talk to and provide input for. And so, yeah, I mean, and maybe I'm biased, but being a battery engineer, battery pack design engineer within Rebuild is a real fun job right now.
No, for sure. And I think that it just comes across from the projects that you're working on. As I said, that exposure for anyone joining the business at this stage is going to be incredible for their career, and just hone those skills so much quicker, really, in all honesty. So that's an exciting proposition for sure. I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask you is just zooming out of Rebuild a little bit, to be honest. Obviously, you guys do so much in that space, and an area that we find a lot of businesses have challenge with and struggle with is business has a great prototype, they've got a great concept, a great kind of early stage product, but actually taking that through to pilot and then full scale manufacturing, there's a real hurdle there for businesses that they do struggle to get past. I guess for Rebuild or just for those businesses directly, is there anything from your experience of doing this with multiple businesses that you can kind of pass on as kind of, I suppose, key steps, manual, however you want to describe it, that these businesses can look at to kind of ensure that they're able to transition from prototype and concept into a fully fledged manufacturing business?
Yeah, I mean, the general advice I would give is to really, it's easy to get really excited about designing a vehicle without the battery pack in mind. And when you design a vehicle without the battery pack in mind, that ends up, intentionally or not, driving a lot of customization into the battery pack, which is then where you get a lot of development costs that maybe you didn't fully understand you needed to develop and build a battery pack that supports the vehicle, right? And so I would just recommend thinking of the battery pack during vehicle design. Think about standardization. Think about, the modular building blocks that are available in the industry today, and try to design around those. If you can't use a standard battery module or standard battery cell, whether it's cylindrical or pouch-based module, then that's when you really start to drive more and more customization. And then the other thing I'd say is, for customers who know they're going to need maybe different sized battery packs, let's say they have a short range vehicle and an extended range vehicle, really think about the manufacturing process for those different battery packs, meaning to the extent that you can leverage the same manufacturing process, the same components for both the short range and the extended range battery pack, that's going to lower the piece price for both, right? To the extent that you have different components, you need different, manufacturing workstations for the short range and extended range. Not only does that, increase your capital needs, but increase your component piece prices because you're not driving volume to those. And so everything just starts going up. And that's where we really, that's where we're finding a lot of benefit when customers start to engage us early, is we start to get them to think about not only modular building design up front, but start thinking about manufacturing processes. How do you lower the piece price at the tail end once you get from product to getting ready to build? And so, that's not something that you need to necessarily engage Rebuild on, but that's something that everyone should be doing from product concept.
And in terms of Rebuild, on that note, is that I appreciate everyone is at a different time frame, but is that something that you would recommend really when engaging with Rebuild? If you can start earlier, there's more value add from you guys as a business.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's always the case. Is the further you get along in the development process, the harder it gets to make decisions that affect your program, right? You're now getting closer to your production dates that you've maybe promised to investors. You've made key decisions that are harder to turn back around on, maybe capital investments. A decision that changes one part of the product will have impacts on other parts of the product. And so that's, harder for the engineering teams to solve for as you get closer to production. So it's always easier to make changes in product concept than it is in, beta development than it is in, final design development.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Well, I think, one of the things that I'm sure that for everyone listening is it certainly will pique their attention in terms of what Rebuild are doing. And as you said, that gap in the market that, you guys have seen and developed a business that is really going to add a lot of value to multiple businesses going through that process. I guess my question at this stage for you is, for these guys who are going to now keep an eye on Rebuild and who are kind of got that on the radar, what should these guys be looking out for in terms of milestones, and what are the next big things for you guys as a solutions business in particular?
Yeah, I'd say, pay attention to our production facility in Pittsburgh. I mean, that's growing quickly. We have a lot of campus availability still in our Pittsburgh site, and have capabilities to support really anything from the battery pack production that we've been talking about, but even down to contract manufacturing built to spec for even battery cells for folks who are looking to onshore those capabilities. And then I would say, keep an eye out for some press releases and partnerships between Rebuild and some of our customers, just in terms of launching their product publicly, announcing their manufacturing facilities in partnership with Rebuild. It's not something I can talk about quite yet, but keep an eye out for that in the next 3-4 months.
Yeah, I imagine the marketing team at Rebuild has got a real job on their hands over the next 6 to 12 months with all the publications.
Yes, a very exciting time for both Battery Solutions and the marketing teams helping us out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if you don't need engineers, you're definitely going to need marketeers. So that's definitely on the horizon as well. So, well, look, Peter, I just wanted to thank you for your time and your insight into the solutions business and Rebuild as a wider business as well. And I think that it's such an exciting time for you guys as a business. And from a personal perspective, I'm of all eyes and on what's going on, and I can't wait to see those publications myself.
Great, thank you, Josh. Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk about it, and I'm excited to share how Battery Solutions grows with the public.
Right. Well, when those come out, we'll have to do a round 2 and talk about all the next phases of growth.
Perfect. I look forward to it.
Right, thanks very much, Peter.